Thank you all for coming today. I noticed your instructors, for those of you who are in marketing right now, we're taking attendance, so I'm Cecile, and I'm the coordinator of the Maji Center. I just want to introduce you to our panel today. We're fortunate and blessed to have them all here. Kimberly Allison is the founder and director of Marketing RX Inc., Canada's social media authority. Kimberly is an award-winning consultant with over 25 years in media. This includes 10 years as a film, TV writer, producer, director, and on-air personality, and 6 years in radio as an award-winning sales consultant. Kimberly and her team, and I think, where is part of her team? Yay! At Marketing RX consult and manage social media marketing for companies across North America and even in the UK. Rule breaker, salt lover, dancer, that is Kimberly. Yes, you see, she's a rule breaker for sure. Next, I'm going to start at the other end, and Amy took baking at NAIT in 2013, and I'm going to butcher this. Nachtigall? Nachtigall. Sorry, should have asked you before. Her husband Jeff, where are you, Jeff? There, in the front row, are co-owners of Sugared and Spiced, a boutique bake shop in a funky back alley off White Avenue. An Alberta Booster crowdfunding campaign the couple launched in 2016 raised its entire $20,000 goal in less than 24 hours. In fact, they ended up raising over $50,000. If you have never been, trust me, it's definitely worth the trip. It's very, very boutique-y and amazing. Sweet inside and out, that is Amy. Okay, Trevor is in the middle. Trevor attended SAIT. We will not hold that against him. With a focus on advertising sales, he is the owner of Boller Photography, which specializes in interior and event photography as well as headshots. He worked as a caseworker for the Native Counseling Services of Alberta for 15 years, and in 2010, he dropped everything to pursue his passion and start his own business. Genuine and real, that is Trevor. Arden C. just came in, thanks you, Arden, is the co-founder and media workhorse for Prairie Noodle Shop. Asian noodles inspired by Prairie flavors. He worked for just over 3 years as the manager of the University of Alberta's Venture Mentoring Service. He recently became an investment manager with the Yaletown Partners. Community builder, that is Arden. Chris C., well, we know which one he is. He's the only one left. His co-owner, no relation. I actually had that on my sheet. Was co-owner of Blitz Conditioning until spring 2018. He now owns C Social Media and works as a media and story consultant with Service Credit Union. In his spare time, he still personal trains, instructs in the NAIT PFT program. Energy and enthusiasm to spare, that is Chris. So take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So with the show of hands, how many of you guys are on Facebook? Okay, so that's who's not on Facebook, more important. Oh, wow, those are the people you got to watch for. Okay, who's on Twitter? Show of hands, Twitter. About half. Instagram. Where are my Instagrammers? Ooh, lots of Instagrammers. Wow. And YouTube. Are you YouTubers? Oh, yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Really excited to see a lot of great, big, shiny faces about entrepreneurship. And we're going to talk about social media and dig into it with these guys and see what they have to share as far as some tips and some things you should do and maybe some things you shouldn't do as an entrepreneur and also as, being in business. So I guess my first question would be maybe, when did you start your social media, like whatever channel is working the best for you? When did you start, and how did you know it was working for you? So maybe I'll start with you, Arden.
Right. Okay. When did we start? So I never really got into social media until the business started, and the way we started our restaurant was through pop-ups. And so the easiest way to get out there was to get on Twitter. And I think as a starting when you're starting your business out and you don't have a big audience, the best thing to do is to kind of leverage other people's audiences. And so when we were doing our pop-ups, we were doing it at Get Cooking and through MacEwan University. And so we would have them kind of tweet us out and leverage that. So we got exposed to a lot of their audience, right? Both MacEwan and the Get Cooking School. And that's how we started building an audience. And we knew it was working when we did our very first pop-up and we sold out within the first 45 minutes of opening, and there were people lined up and we had to turn people away. And so there was a whole process of just getting awareness, letting people know initially where things were happening and what was in store for the next pop-up. But a lot of times I talk to young entrepreneurs who are trying to find an audience. And we found the best way is to piggyback off other people's audiences and get them to get you exposure and then get them to follow you. So that's how it worked for us.
That's really good. Thank you. Trevor, do you have something to say about
Sure.
that?
Just so I'm on focus, what was the question?
So we're talking about social media. You don't need that mic. You've got it.
Okay.
So we're talking about social media, when you started and when did you know it was really working for you? So I know like you're big into the real estate photography and do very well with that, and then you've got your personality side as well. So maybe talk about sort of when you really started social media for your business, and when did you know it was working?
Okay. Well, I fired my employer about 2010 and said, I'm going to work for myself. I want to do my dream, which is photography, right? And so here I am with 10,000 other photographers in Edmonton. How am I going to stick out, right? So the big picture is I had to build a facade somehow, right? Honestly, it was building a facade. And so I started out with one of the first photo booth companies in Edmonton here, which I said, I'm going to use this vehicle to get me in the community, get me known, with event planners and with people who are influential in Edmonton. And so I had to do a lot of free stuff, right? So I started out with Twitter. Twitter was my first thing. And because I had a lot of weekend works, I had a lot of time during the week just to, tweet, follow people. So I had this formula. I'm going to follow 10 or 15 people a day. And because you can't have two more followers and who you're following, and you have to have some kind of balance in there, otherwise they don't allow it. So that was my formula to get started, follow, and then review the next day who's not following me, and then get rid of them, and then go into the next list, and like keep it common subjects that, like whether it be photography, small business, people in Edmonton, event planners. My focus was event planners at the time, so a lot of hashtag event planning and that. And so how did I know it was starting to work is just the numbers were getting and people were starting to talk. There was a buzz, I'd go into a donut shop or a second cup and I'd go, hey, you're Trevor Boller, and because I'm a photographer, I took a lot of pictures doing my stuff, right? And so there's nothing better than being a visual and getting attention of people rather than just doing a plain tweet or something like that. The more pictures you got out there, whatever you're doing, whether you're bodybuilding or like eating, and everybody wants to take a picture of their coffee because everybody has a common ground with coffee, whatever, right? So it's a really good place to get engagement going.
Yes, I agree. I know I went to a Blackhawk golf course, I think it was 2 years ago, and I pulled up to drop my clubs off, and the guy said, Marketing RX. And I thought, oh God, who knows me? What have I done? He said, hi, I see you on Twitter all the time, and I'm so glad you're here. So yeah, it's amazing how it creates that recognition when you see people in person. All of a sudden, they start to relate you to the brand if you've done it the right way. So Chris, do you have something to talk about with that?
I started on Twitter, I think about 13 years ago, I think.
Ooh.
And probably about, it might have been
me.
before. But actually, it was a bit before the business started. When I was doing research at the university, I would literally take research papers and summarize them in 140 characters less and post a link, which is very boring. And then once we started getting on to, or once I started opening up the company called Blitz Conditioning, I basically followed every single media person in Edmonton and then just started chatting with them. And not in like a way that was like weird, creepy, but just like funny. And then that actually led to a lot of traction on traditional media, which was essentially becoming sort of the voice of authority, and really using that as sort of an extension to produce or to create more online content and get to know more people. And then Instagram, I was kind of like talking to my two main platforms are Instagram and Twitter. But on Instagram, basically, I got on it quite a bit early in Instagram as like kind of the platform, and then just started basically posting 2 or 3 times a day, and really just kind of like put effort into producing great content, and then repeated the exact same thing. So basically just started following everyone that was on Instagram, and that was basically when everyone was like when when there was a bit of a shift into Instagram, there were a lot of people that were like, I don't know why we wouldn't be using Twitter. This doesn't make sense. And then now it's become sort of the predominant platform, which has actually helped me to get a lot of like new jobs and new contracts and sort of travel at least all over Alberta shooting some videos and stuff. So yeah.
Got a good life. He was just in New Zealand recently, which was pretty rad. So yeah. Something to add to that?
I guess I probably started about maybe 6 or 7 years ago using social media, and I had no clue what I was doing or how to use any of it or anything. And at that time, I was actually just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Our kids had gone, or were both in school full time, and I knew I didn't want to be a teacher anymore and trying to figure it out. So that's kind of when I started baking and was just selling cookies at a local farmer's market, and started using social media. I think at that time more Twitter than anything else. Just like letting people know where we were and what product we would have for the day. And that's when I noticed how much it worked, just even when we were super small scale at the time, because people would ask or show up at the market because we had tweeted out where we would be and when and what we had, and so they'd come looking for it. So that's kind of how it got started.
Awesome. So I think a lot of times with business owners, they're very much about ROI and like, what is this? How am I selling anything with social media? What's the return on investment for my time and effort and money spent on this social media platform? So I don't know if you've had any of those questions or thoughts about the return on investment, but maybe somebody here wants to speak to that as far as what do you find is a solid return on investment for your business or your client's business with regards to social media, and how do you communicate that effectively to either yourself or your client? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I think we're getting to a point where we're seeing a massive shift in return on investment, and it's primarily because analytics are getting better, right? You can now tell from, let's say, an Instagram post, whether or not someone's gone to your bio, and then in that bio, you can now tell what your landing page is. So then you go straight to the landing page, and then when you get to a point where you see an actual physical conversion, it's what's at the end of it, right? So is there a tag that you've now kind of like put on that person, or is there sort of a form that they fill out, or is a product at the end of it, right? So I think the whole notion around return on investments way more important now, and certainly at a point where a lot of the small and big businesses that I deal with no longer ask for it, they just ask for your data. And data is like, in my mind, coming from like a research background, kind of king when it comes to how effective your social media is, right? But then also from a perspective of analytics, how well is a post performing, and whether or not you should do more of those type of posts or other type of posts, or whether or not you should be maybe telling a story or doing something a bit more unconventional with your social media platforms. Those are always kind of great readouts because, again, numbers don't lie, right? So.
Yeah, and I think, what's really interesting about that is I've also been in the traditional media side with radio and television, and I think, business owners go, okay, what kind of results can you show me? What kind of ROI? What kind of statistics and data? And I always go, okay, so what kind of data do you have from your billboard or your TV commercial? Who watches TV commercials? Like, we're PVRing that, right? Radio, aren't you switching every time you hear an ad? So, these business owners that are investing in these multiple platforms, and then they come at, social media, well, I gotta see an ROI and I gotta see the data. And it's like, well, just a minute. Can we look at all of it? But that's the beauty behind social media, is you can show specific data and you can craft your strategy depending on what the client's needs are and their demographics. So, I love it as a tool to just continue to build that conversation, because I really truly believe conversations convert over any kind of ad campaign. So that's why things like that you're talking about, Chris, make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think for those of us who are also in brick and mortar type of business, selling products and goods, the real challenge is understanding that reach and like, how does that convert and what does that look like? Because you can't just track somebody and they hit a buy button and sales, right? If you're not doing an electronic platform. So for us, it is defining what does a return mean for you and what do you want to get out of your social media. And for us, we realized very quickly that it wasn't about, traditionally, actually, in the old days, for those who remember, there were coupons that you could get in a store, right? And if you put those coupons out on the newspapers, that's how you could tell what your conversion was, because people actually came in and spent that in your store. Well, you can't do that with social media. And so what we realized very quickly was it's more about building our brand. And it really is about, your brand is what people think of you when you're not in the room, right? What's their impression of you? And what are you trying to get across as a message? And so we started, instead of, we watched social media change, and that's something that I would also say is that, especially in the restaurant and the food business, it used to be a lot of, hey, here's our food, come eat our food. But your Instagram feed gets pretty saturated after a while, and pretty soon it's one pretty plate after another, and it all gets lost in this mess. So we thought, well, how do we stand out? And we realized that we started this business to bring people together. We're a community business. And so a big part of our messaging was about supporting each other. So what did we start doing? We started using our platform. We kind of worked on maybe 60, 70% of our messaging was promoting other local businesses. It was letting people know, this is what's going on with these guys, come check them out. So people started coming to our feed because we were a source of information. And then once in a while you pepper in and we got the special coming in today. And so there's that variation. But if you're constantly bombarding people, it becomes an advertisement and people get numb to that. So we've had a lot of comments from people who say they love how we support other local businesses. We've got that brand. People know that if they're coming to our restaurant, they're supporting other people in the community, and that we're always happy to promote other businesses, and they approach us. So we build a community, we build a brand. How does that convert? Well, hopefully in our numbers. That's a really hard thing to quantify. But at the end of the day, we've successfully built an image of our business that we wanted to, and I think that was what we wanted out of our social media. And then once in a while we put out there that, yeah, we have this special going on, and we see that sales on that special go up. But that's not the whole use of it, right? And it can't be, in my opinion, because of the volume we all go through every day, and the amount that we see. So if you're just relying on it to advertise a special or an item that you have on sale, you might want to think about how you want to build other messaging around it so that people find your feed useful and not just an ad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you hit it on the head. Whenever I think about social media, I think the greatest people are discussing the why of their brand, not the what. So who does that really well? Apple. Like, you see their ads and they're all about how people are using their phones. They're not saying, here's where you buy it and here's the price. No, if you sell the why of your brand, like you said, you're building community. So that's the why of your brand. And, for business owners now, I heard a stat recently that it's 7 to 9 touches before anyone's going to do business with you. That is a long selling cycle. So the return on investment has to also be in consideration of that long selling cycle, and the fact that probably a consumer is not only going to see you on social, on your website, in store, maybe in an ad, and it should all be aligned, and you should be looking at your entire 360 customer experience, not just one thing, to make sure that's all aligned and that you attract your right following. So
likes does not equal revenue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember
Yes,
that.
Like good point. Likes doesn't even equal revenue.
When I first started out, I had a tagline, and my name's Trevor Boller, so I had a tagline, Bollerize. I Bollerize my pictures, I Bollerize the properties that I shoot, like in commercial photography. And at first I did it as a joke, and then when this conversion, I started to realize, hey, this is working, because people are starting to call me and text me emails, hey, I need you to come Bollerize one of my listings. I need you to come Bollerize some of this. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow, hey, there's something to this Bollerize thing here, So now, anytime I have a realtor and I do his properties, it's Boller. You'll see it on there. It's one of the hashtags is Bollerize and all that, and it works now, and I use it all the time. Yeah. So I'm not a technical person. I don't look, and I'm not the social media big company here where I'm keeping track of my stats and all that. But just the comments, the inquiries and the word of mouth, and say, hey, I follow you on Instagram. My vehicle that I use the most is Instagram of all of them, right? It used to be Twitter when I first started out, and that was to build my client base and meet people, great people like Chris and all that stuff, do stuff in the community with them, and all those things. But now it's changed. I'm visual, so my main vehicle now is Instagram now, and I'm getting a lot of referrals from Instagram. And now today, I can say that our weeks are all booked. Monday to Friday we're booked, and no more weekend work, and it works. Yeah.
Good job. But it didn't start out that way, and as an entrepreneur, it's quite the roller coaster ride. So this is just the highlight reel, guys. This is not reality every day, right? Did you have something to add to that, Amy?
I agree with what Arden was saying about building a brand and how that's for me, it's mostly Instagram as well, because it's so visual, the cakes that I'm making and that kind of thing. So showcasing them that way, but it is about building a brand, because, they could see beautiful cakes elsewhere too. And you have to draw people in. And so we definitely notice when we post things online, and especially on Instagram, we know right away people come in. And so we see that return on investment almost immediately that way. But whenever we do things like where Jeff and I post things together, or if I just do little videos where I'm just like talking to people, or we're being silly or whatever, showing our personalities, it always blows me away, like the interaction then that happens with consumers and clients, because they're getting to know you and your brand, and not just a picture of a cake that somebody made. So.
Absolutely, that personality is so key. And when I work with our businesses, I always say, okay, no one's going to fall in love with your building or your business card or any of that. They're going to fall in love with you, the brand behind your business. So how are we developing that brand voice so that on social media, you are on brand, either with your staff or with us managing the social media for them? And you're absolutely right, personality is key. And if you can be more personable and less corporate. There's a book I'm reading right now called, it's by Mark Schaefer, called Marketing Rebellion, which, I don't know, has anyone heard of that book with a show of hands? Okay, it talks about the most human company will win. And so there's a real shift to that exact thing. Has anyone made any mistakes that you want to tell people about that maybe they can look out for in the future and not do? Anything you that, yeah?
Just like a learning thing as we go on. Like if you're, like I represent my business for the most part. I try to stay away, like on Twitter, I would say stay away from the political things as much as possible. I'll retweet something, whatever, right? But it's really hard to take a stand on something. And that's something my mistake, it's a learning thing to try walk away from this, walk away. It's not worth it, one of my biggest things I find out, like for the Facebook or Facebook business page, don't burn somebody's whether they're for or against vaccinating. That'll get you in so much hot water and all that stuff, because there's so many. There's so much passion on each side, whatever, and
controversy.
And all that stuff. Yeah, so I always try to stay away from that stuff. And
I think the lesson I learned early is not to cross-post, right? Every platform has a different use. And if you post the same thing on all three platforms and somebody's following you on all three, they're going to get pretty bored of you pretty fast. And we had to, over time, learn, and it takes a bit of work, but learn, like for us, Twitter is about engaging in conversation and educating people about what's going on in the community. Instagram is about showcasing what's going on in our shop and telling some great stories about what's happening with our staff. Facebook, it's changed, the algorithms and such. I managed our social media for the first two and a half years, and I actually have someone managing our social media now, which has been great. But we've been trying to play around with that and see what works and what doesn't. So Facebook is still a little nebulous. But we find our greatest engagement to be on Instagram, really. It's still, and even if it's because it's visual, doesn't mean you can't tell a good story. Like we had a case where it was just last month when it was minus 40, and it was a Sunday, and we were doing a private dinner that night, and our chef had noted like the band that was that ran our hood motor up on the roof of the restaurant had snapped because it was minus 40. So what were we going to do? Everything's closed. We have a private party coming in, and so what he did was he went in and he went up there on the roof and he taped it up. And he basically fixed, like jerry-rigged it to the point where it could work for the evening so that we could wait until the next day and get it. So we put that post out there, and he sent me photos just saying, hey, this is what happened, as ownership, like this is what's going on. And I thought, well, this is a great story. We were able to pump that out and got some massive engagement. But then people then know at that point, like, this is what this company is about. This is the people behind it. And so finding those unique stories. So again, don't be afraid to step out, be personal, tell that story. We made a mistake in the beginning of just, here's our food, eat our food. And after a while, we watched engagement kind of drop, right? It gets boring. And so it takes work, but if you're going to be on there, then you might as well put in the effort to figure out what story you want to tell on which channel. So that was the biggest lesson we learned, is to not just, Hootsuite, everybody was talking about use Hootsuite, but I was like, well, you're just posting the same story across all three, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I find that really lazy. I think it's lazy. And I wrote an article about that, saying don't wear the same dress to every social media party, because that's what you're doing. And no matter if you're at the keg party or you're the business thing or whatever, you're wearing the same dress, it doesn't work. So really tailor your message. And I think
I like to change my dress.
Change your dress, pink or whatever. Anyone else have something to add to that? About a mistake maybe that you made that you learned a lesson from?
I don't know. I can't think of like a big mistake that stands out or whatever, but I do, like, struggle with putting, like I said, you need to put yourself out there and let people see your personality and stuff. But that's something I struggle with every day because I hate doing that and I feel super uncomfortable doing it. And so it takes a lot of effort and conscious decision to do that. So I think that's like a mistake, something I struggle with every day.
So are you more of an introvert?
Oh yeah, big time.
And you're probably inside the bottle. So this is what I find with my business is, you know, even our Instagram account. Nikki is managing our Instagram account now because I don't have time and I can't think right about my business and what to post. So I need somebody else to do that for me. And so sometimes having that outside person go, this is what we need to do, because I know for me, I can't think of what we should be sharing.
I think too, we're kind of at that point where we've been doing social media, Jeff and I, and mostly myself for the business account. But to the point where now we're really busy in the shop, or busy enough that I don't have as much time to be on social media, and yet I know how important it is. And so that kind of falls by the wayside. Yeah, and okay, what do we do with this now? Do we hire somebody? We're kind of at that point where considering that more now. And
yes.
So.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Chris, did you have anything to add on that? Any mistakes you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Don't do this. Don't do it. Whatever it is.
I think, especially when it comes to social media, it's learning when to put it away. Because I think as a business and also as an individual, you have two things that you're doing, right? You're producing content as business, but then you're also kind of like consuming content as an individual person. So if you've like mindlessly scrolled on the toilet seat for like 20 minutes and you're just flipping around, and all of a sudden you start realizing that like this is way too much of this platform or of this consumption for me. Also realize that like at some point in time, like it's sunny outside, go out, have some fun. That's usually when you're most creative. That's usually when you can produce that level of content that you're not stuck in the reads all the time, right? And I think right now especially we're seeing very very innate reactive thinking online, and a lot of times when you're responding back to someone in sort of like a potential like problem that's going on or a comment, and we're thinking like, okay, great, I need to like respond back to this right away. I need to teach this person something. Go for a walk. Like just go and hang out, chill for a bit,
Yeah.
and just stop, right? Because like you just have to cut through that little bit of an emotional swing, and I think that's kind of the biggest lesson I've learned.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
I think it's also important to understand what social media can do and what it can't. And never forget about the fundamentals of it's a business you're running, unless you're in the business of PR, but not a PR machine. And a good example of this is like we had a great social media presence and campaign and building up our pop-ups and stuff. Anybody who knows the history of our company, and this is only like in the last 4 years ago. But what happened was when we first opened, we got overwhelmed. We weren't prepared. The food quality wasn't consistent. We were getting mixed reviews. It was not the business we had envisioned or wanted. And I remember the chef that was working with the consulting chef we brought back to work with us at the time said, you're not going to save your business through a social media campaign. And so we basically turned the social media off and spent a good 2 months digging into our processes, getting our product back to where it should be, to what we were proud of. And when you're proud of your product, it's easy to get on social media and advertise it. But he was right. We weren't going to save this with a few tweets and some great pictures on Instagram. We needed to get back to making a great product that people wanted, and that was the fundamental. So just make sure you're very clear on what your social media can and can't do for you.
Yeah, I remember in radio sales, I used to say it's like an amplifier. So it's going to take you up or down really quickly. So like you said, if your internal product and service and people are bad and you're all over social media, it's probably not going to be a good thing. So make sure that that's sorted first, and that's really smart. Because I remember I was in radio sales, and there was this one company I worked with. It was a restaurant, and their food was terrible. And I said, we got to stop. No, it's good, and we're going to keep advertising. And they were out of business in 2 months. And I warned them. So, absolutely, social media is an amplifier. And I think true to what you're talking about with mindfulness and how much time are you spending on these social media platforms. So for me, I'm actually doing a talk in Victoria at Social Media Camp, if you haven't heard of it. It's the biggest social media conference in Canada. That's in Victoria, April 25th, 26th. Anyway, I'm talking about social media and mental health. And my session's called Addicted to Love, because I think we can get addicted. Our brains get addicted to that. Oh, how many likes did I get when I posted this? And oh my gosh, so-and-so's feed is so much better. And when you start looking at other people and comparing, and then you realize that's not reality, it's just a little sliver of what they want to share with you. So being mindful of that, I think, as you go forward and creating your plan and not worrying too much about what everybody else is doing. I think the best people in the world didn't care what people thought, right? Like if you watch that new Bohemian Rhapsody movie or any of those, like he didn't care what people thought. So just do you and don't worry too much about what everybody else thinks.
I just want to say that I was one of those people who was addicted to social media, and it just got too bad. Or like Twitter, you know. In order to keep up Twitter, you have to be basically on there in my opinion, every 5 minutes of the day. You see the people on there who are like posting every 5 minutes and they're getting the likes, I was that person, you know, and to get to, and saying, oh, am I going to get a like? Am I going to like? You know, and I got the like, and it's like, it's a mental, it honestly hits something in your brain where you get the pleasure every time you get a like. And that was me. And it was just like, I was on at 6 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I better post all the best news stories, you know, to get these likes, you know, going all day long and to the night, you know, and on my weekends, oh, going to be in my Twitter. It consumed me. And like, so now when I don't know, it was about a year or two ago, I finally walked away from it. I use it now in my business on a like a good basis, you know, but like I will admit, it got to me and it got to my ego, you know, like after you start seeing your name, it's, oh, Trevor Boller is influential in this and all this stuff, you know, it gets to my ego, and my head got bigger than it was supposed to, you know, and so finally one day, I don't know what happened, I got enlightened or something like that, and then, hey Trevor, what are you doing to yourself, you know?
Angels started singing.
Walked away, and
Yes.
So don't get into that, get rid of the ego and just be yourself and have fun with it and all that.
Yeah, and you do a great job with that, for sure.
I actually, great cautionary tale. Like in my day job, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I always joke that the day job pays my bills and the restaurant pays everybody else's bills, which is pretty much the truth.
Right.
And there's an entrepreneur I ran into several years ago who had a great product that he thought was going to be awesome. He was getting massive engagement on social media, Instagram. He was getting thousands of likes and followers, and he thought that meant revenue. And so he was so confident in getting into a launch. He was raising investment money. When he actually launched his product, 10 people signed up for it. He's like, where are all these, you know, like it was because all he'd done was a social media campaign around this subscription idea that he had. But because he got so many likes, he actually thought he had a business. And when, you know, he built his whole ego around it and everything, in the reality, he's actually working for a company now, right? Because
You have to be really careful. Like you said, likes doesn't even equal revenue. And I think that's a really important part to talk about with business owners. Yeah. Is there anything that you guys would want to tell people as maybe you're starting out on social media for a business and maybe you don't know where to start? Do you have any advice on that?
I'll say 10 seconds. Like on Twitter, like when I first started Twitter and then I died after like 2 weeks because nobody responding, you know, like, hey, I'm here, whatever, at the Calgary Tower, and then nobody says anything back, and you go, is this on? Is this invisible, you know? And you start again another 2 hours, make a post, and nobody say anything, and it takes time to get engagement. So the key really is to start talking to people, start talking to this guy, start talking to you, and then get this conversation going. That's how you get in, by conversation, not by your own posts and waiting for the crickets. Nobody said anything. It's engagement, conversation, like cocktail hour. You have to have the cocktail hour with those other users out there, or nothing.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I think, you know, I tell people it's like walking into a cocktail party or walking into this room. If all you did was go, hey, buy my stuff, I say it's called social media, not sell my shit media. So stop selling your shit and start socializing and start going out and having, you know, mindful conversations with people. I totally agree, because if you're genuine and you're actually talking to somebody about what's interesting to them, like Chris, I'm talking to you about New Zealand and whatever, I'm not like, hey, here's what I'm doing with my life. Like, you're not inviting me to any parties because I won't shut up about myself, right? So, you know, it's good to have that conversation.
I think on that same line, it's also defining which platform your audience or your potential client basis will be on. Because I think a lot of times we will jump on every single platform possible, right? So you're whatever's back there. But you're essentially going on everything and you're doing the exact same thing, cross-posting all this stuff, and then you just get into this content, like your content fatigue, where the only thing your job is to do, which it still is as a marketing person, is to produce content, you know, but at the same time, it then becomes this beast that you're trying to feed you on a consistent basis, right? But if I know like most of my audience is going to be hanging out, that's like maybe 25 to like 40 on Instagram, then why do I really need to use any other platform but that, right? So there's that level of communication, that level of instinct. You know, if I know I've like my audience is like 55 to like dead, then that's perfectly fine, right? I'm just gonna jump on that on Facebook and
I'm
really
almost
kind of use
there.
that as
What?
a promotional platform. Sorry, but it's
my
that
God.
like what we're seeing.
Where do we go? The dead
What we're
people?
seeing is that
Where do the dead
there's a
people
big
go?
difference in between which platform you're going to be hanging out on, right?
Yeah.
If you know that your part of your job is to work with traditional media people, you know they're starved for content, and every single traditional media person is looking at it saying like, I'm not going to engage on Instagram, but my job is to be on Twitter. That's so if I'm hanging out on Twitter, my purpose is to engage with people that want to sort of dip into this flow and that want to like have this level of engagement, right? So it's to define each one of like purpose for each one of the platforms and then like limit your time on it, right? Like if you're gonna go again, like 20 minutes worth of time on this thing, 20 minutes worth of time on that thing, and then kind of let it roll, but think less about production of content in that case and more about like engagement, right? So
I have a PDF
Sorry
if you
about the
want to
55
look at something where it actually talks about each platform and the demographic and what kind of time it takes and all that kind of stuff. If you want it, just pop me an email, Kimberly, Kimberly, @marketingrx.ca, and I will fire off the PDF to you. I think it's on my Facebook page, is it, Nikki? I can't remember, but I figure I'll just, is it on my website too? Yeah, so it's good because then it's a reference sheet for you to see where you want to spend your time.
I think too, when I started out and had no clue what to do, a thing that I found really helpful was just to ask questions and meet with people who I knew were doing a good job of the things that I wanted to be doing. And so sitting down with other entrepreneurs and talking about like, just getting guidance. How do you do an Instagram post? When do you post it? Like just, and them suggesting resources and things and then doing my research from there. That was really beneficial to me. And then also like just paying attention to other accounts that I admired or thought were doing a great job of it, whether it was the same industry or not, just, you know, paying attention and researching what are they doing that's working, what are they doing that I would like to be doing, what is working, what's not working, that kind of thing, and then take what you can to apply it to your own situation and how do you use that to further yourself in the social media game.
And I love your Instagram, by the way. That's how I found out about you. And then they've got an amazing email follow-up to you, so you sign up for their email list, and then they have the same kind of photos. And I haven't had their cakes yet, though, but I really want to. Anyway, your stuff is amazing, so yes.
I said I have, especially for those of you, I mean, how many of you are thinking of running your own business and having social media for it? There's a few of you out there. Okay. And so I think two takeaways or lessons that I learned early were, number one, don't be afraid to engage a professional for teaching. Not to run your media, but like I remember we were lucky, we had a lot of social media influencers who were interested in what we were doing in the beginning. And I met Linda Brown, who used to actually be here at NATE. And I just reached out to her and I said, hey, could I spend an hour with you? I'll pay you for your consulting. It was worth the money we paid her. It wasn't huge, but like, you know, it was valuable time. And because I'd paid, I was paying attention. But she, in an hour, really gave me a great crash course in the usage of social media, not only the mechanics of it, but some of the etiquette. And that really helped me to avoid some pitfalls that I might have had on my own if I didn't go to someone like that. So that's one thing you can do to ramp up. I love the studying, like you said, like look at who's doing it well and what you can learn from that. And I would encourage all of you who are about to start a business, do your social media yourself to start. And start small. Pick one platform, get on it, learn it, and know what's going on. Because eventually, with any luck, yes, you'll actually have people who are running that for you. But unless you're knowledgeable on it on your own, how are you going to be able to give them guidance? Right? When I work my social media manager, I'm able to give them guidance and say, this is our brand, these are the kinds of things we do, these are the things we don't do, and this is the kind of messaging we want to have. And I'm able to monitor that and see if, you know, so in the first, 3 months that we worked together, he would send me drafts of all the social media. And when it got to the point where we felt comfortable that he got the brand and everything, I just leave him now. Like I pay him every month and we have a meeting once every month, but I don't have to check up on him every day because we got to that point of trust. I couldn't have done that if I didn't run the media myself for the first 2 years. So find your own voice, understand it, engage a professional at some point. That'll make your life a lot easier. But yeah, don't be afraid to get in there. Don't right off the bat go, I got to hire somebody or get a student to do it, because nobody knows your business as well as you do.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Where are we for time, Cecile? We got about 15
But you're
minutes.
not dead.
About 5 minutes. Okay, do you want to just open it up for any questions anyone has here? Does anyone have any questions that we haven't already addressed with the panel? Don't be shy. Oh, yay, we've got some takers.
So personally, I don't really use LinkedIn, partially because I haven't really had to look for a job. This sounds weird, but because of how strong my social media presence is on all the other platforms, haven't really had to use it. But having said that, Service Credit Union does use LinkedIn quite often. And it's mostly for hiring, recruiting strategies, and also for direct communication. Because there's a lot of noise on all the other platforms, and what we're seeing on LinkedIn is that there's actually fewer amounts of like refresh rate. So I can post something, and probably about like 2 or 3 days later, that post will still be kind of like relative top post, right? So I'd say it's quite, depending on, again, like what you're planning on using that particular platform for. If you're thinking about scaling your company to, you know, X numbers, fantastic, use LinkedIn, right? If you're looking for a job, go ham on LinkedIn, right? Like, you know, you're able to engage with so many HR people, so many other people, you know, and if you're also looking for amplification and exposure, a lot of marketing people do hang out on those platforms. So it's great to sort of use that as a direct messaging platform, right? So it is sort of changing your voice and narrative. I generally tend to like go a bit off the cuff on all of my other platforms, but certainly on LinkedIn, it has to be a bit more professional and stuff, right? So.
Hang on, I think I have something to add on LinkedIn. You go ahead.
I think for us, we found, I mean, LinkedIn is, part of it's going to depend on your own networks on LinkedIn. But I'm finding it's more of a business to business platform, right? If you're looking for, if you're selling a product that is more commercially or enterprise oriented, great. Business to consumer, I've seen a lot more postings like backlash against this is not Facebook, this is not Twitter, let's keep it professional. If I want to shop for retail stuff, I will go on to this other platform. So really understanding who the audience is around your, and again, that audience is up to you. You know, it's who you decide to accept into your network. You have to remember that. So that's been our experience. So we stayed off LinkedIn particularly because we're a B2C.
And are you looking at it as a personal or a business? Business to business, okay. So recently, yesterday was the ACG Corporate Growth Summit. So Stephen Harper was a speaker at that event, and it was over at the convention center. And I worked with the ACG Edmonton organization to manage just their Twitter and LinkedIn leading up to the event. We didn't do any ad campaigns. We just leveraged the network. So we leveraged the people who are in ACG Edmonton to share the message. So we were putting the content on LinkedIn and then telling them, okay, you guys share it now in your personal feeds. And so that really, like, they had record attendance. And the people who attended said, oh, they did your social media? It was everywhere. So it can be great. Now you can use videos on LinkedIn. Again, be careful. It's not shaky cam weird. The one guy said, hey, I hope our video is going to be better than this. And literally, I was just at the convention center taking a little video of them saying, Hall D, whatever. And they were comparing it to this guy doing like the shaky selfie video about, and I said, no, like we can do much better than that. So the tools are great, just understanding what's the value and benefit of being on that specific platform. But yes, LinkedIn is now kind of starting to up its game with the different tools. It hadn't done anything for a long time, so it'll be one to watch for sure.
It's a good place to grow your own professional brand as well. You can publish papers, thoughts. It's a great place to do a white paper, reaching out to specific audiences. So,
if it wasn't for LinkedIn, Cecilia wouldn't have got my bio at the beginning there.
I guess also jumping on LinkedIn, also realize that it costs you less to market on LinkedIn if you're using paid promoted posts. Yeah. So they're making it very amenable for any business person to jump on that platform and really kind of access that. So, I mean, definitely if it's a B2B, jump on LinkedIn.
Good.
So.
Do we have another question? Yes.
My question is for the whole panel. As given your experience right now and your expertise in your field, do you even bother with traditional marketing?
Great question. Yes, great question. I'll go last.
So I have a little bias. I'm going to raise my hand because I'm a columnist on CBC Radio and also I have a segment on Global TV. So absolutely, traditional media works. The problem is cutting through all the noise when you're on social media. So as a personal trainer, there's like a dime a dozen, right? There's, a group here that graduates 80 every year. There's like, CanFit Pro, the garage, it's like 200, 300. So there's a lot of noise out there. And really the way to create a voice of authority in the people I want to work with is to use all of those platforms together and ensure that when you're tactical when you're deploying a strategy, you're also using traditional media, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't cost you an extensive amount of money and time, right? So, yeah.
My first mistakes at the very beginning was to go traditional media, like radio advertising. I was just a small business, right? And I didn't have the big mentor to say, Trevor, don't do that, because in order to do radio advertising, you know, because you used to sell, that is like, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of capital. It's all capital, because your name has to be repetitive in the high time slots over and over and over again. But when I was just a little business, and the guy just wanted to make his commission, obviously, so he said, here, buy the $6,000 package here, whatever, and then you'll do good, we'll put you on here and here and here, and so it did nothing. There was no turnover and like that, and it just was my mistake, because of the capital. As a small business, as a one-person thing.
Makes me nuts when people sell those things. Sorry, I get really
and I would
angry.
argue, like, don't even think about it.
Oh,
So we can hear
is it on? Okay.
Like, don't even think about it as social media, traditional media. It's all channel, right? Who's your audience? Who do you want to reach, and how are you going to reach them? Not everybody's online, and what's your budget? Like, there's all these characteristics. So look at all of those ways of reaching your customer as channels. And so TV is a great form for telling a story, right? A long form, and it's going to capture people that may not necessarily be on social media. What we do is, like, again, on the news in the mornings, they have those cooking shows and cooking segments, right? So, we've been on those where you get to, people, I'm like, who's watching TV at 6 o'clock in the morning? Nurses getting off their shifts, right? I mean, I was like, wow, it's amazing. It's a great opportunity to reach a different audience in a different way. So don't discount it. It's all different channels, and I would never classify it into old versus new. Communication is is an ageless thing. It's how do you get there.
And and what's going to work. And I love that when I talk to clients and talk about TV, I say, yeah, be in news or be in live sports. Don't be anywhere else, because people can PVR everything else. So do that. Things like, Rogers Place and those billboards, those are terrific. So yeah, so absolutely traditional media can work really well. I think best executed is aligning your social and your traditional so that everything is aligned, and then people go, oh my God, like, I love your stuff because it's on brand everywhere you go, and the in-store experience. Where it falls apart is you've got one thing on radio, you've got one thing on social media, you're a different way in the store, you're something else online, and then it's kind of like marketing's like a hammer and nail, right? So you've got the nail and you want to be doing this, you don't want to be doing a bunch of this because it's going to take you a long time to get through that wood, right? So 7 to 9 touches, the same way, hammer and nail. And if you have the budget, because traditional media is expensive, but things that are not that expensive are like bus benches, if you can be creative with that. Sometimes, like, on buses, you can get some good LRTs, so there's some ways that you can leverage some traditional media without having to, like, break the bank with radio ads. Right?
We've done some traditional media stuff too, but none of it has been paid, because we've done a great job with our social media accounts and getting our brand out there, and a great job on our brand, that we've been invited to do these other traditional things, radio shows and on the news, and so those have worked great for us. And when we've been on CBC in the morning, for example, customers come in and say they've heard us on there, they've seen us on CTV. So we do see, but we haven't paid for any of it. So that's just because of the work we've put in. Sure. So we did an Alberta booster campaign, I guess, because we wanted to open a storefront. And it was to test the market, and also just to raise the money to open the storefront. And so Alberta Booster was fairly new at the time when we did it, and the biggest campaign before. So if you didn't raise all your money within the time frame, you got nothing. And so we didn't want to set it too high. So we thought we'll aim for 20,000. Let's see. It wasn't luck. There was a lot of work that went into it, but that's what we set it for. And so, because we had done all the work leading up to our campaign, and because we had an email, like a newsletter going out to people, and we were building our platforms on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, we let people know that it was going to be happening and to watch for it, and they knew it was happening. They knew. So the day we launched the campaign, put it out there, it went live, and I literally just sat back that day and didn't do anything else except watch other people tweet it and retweet it for us. And so we raised, we hit our goal less than 24 hours into the campaign. And so at that point, we decided we needed, because 5 days, upped our goal to 50,000, and we ended up reaching 57,000 by the end of it. So, but it was because we had built our, because we didn't leave it to chance, or just like, well, let's see what happens and put this out there. It's because we had done so much work leading up to it, like years of work, you know, and talking to other entrepreneurs and asking them questions and like building subscribers to our newsletter and our.
Well done. Good job. Any other questions before we wrap up? We'll take one more. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think there's always huge platforms on any there's always huge opportunity on any platform you go to. A large proportion of time, Snapchat is almost entirely ignored by traditional media and also social media marketing people, because most of us are like 30-something years or older, and we don't understand Snapchat in the same way as someone else does. What I would say is if you have a great product or if you have a great service, that resounds across all platforms, right? If you have an ability to show that platform in a way, show that particular product or business in a way that's demonstrable and easy to market across all platforms, then it doesn't matter what you're using, right? It doesn't matter what the technology changes, it doesn't matter what you have. It's that you can then use that as a lock and key model and modify it a bit, of course. But yeah, that's generally why we don't really talk about Snapchat. It's because like I'm too old for it. But it's also because like that's also why a lot of traditional media marketers don't talk about Instagram, because they're just too old for it and they don't understand it, right? So it's that, like, you're right, Snapchat should be on there as well, but it's just that as businesses, there's very little study around the effectiveness of Snapchat. Yes. Absolutely.
Very young generation, yeah. I saw one guy, actually he's in Australia, and he's got this chocolate shop, and it was really funny. So I started following him on Snapchat, and you know, we started messaging, because you can message video, right? And he says, yeah, people were saying, why are you on Snapchat? Are you sending dick pics? I said, no, I don't, like, that's not what I'm doing, because that's what people thought it was when it first started. And he's like, no, I'm not. But he's leveraging his chocolate shop to like invite people to come and sample the chocolates, and like if it's your birthday or whatever it is. So he's done an amazing job with it. I think, you know, in Canada, we're the last to the party all the time, right? Like we're so last. So anything that's really popular usually happens in Europe first, and then US, and then Canada. So you know, I think it is coming more of it. I think a lot of people are a little bit nervous about, you know, how to use it, how to do it, particularly because it has to be in person in the store. So then it's about training somebody there to do it and to be the voice of the brand. So that gets a little bit complex for business owners. But certainly if you're trying to reach that young demographic, and having kind of like, you know, a young like team manage that would be brilliant for somebody who's trying to reach that 18, you know, the teenagers or whatever, early 20s.
And just to support that, like I said earlier, it's about the channel, right? Figure out who your audience is and how you get in front of them. If your audience is, you know, 21 to just born, then yeah, maybe Snapchat just to kind of on the flip side of 65 to 10. But
where are we? I don't know.
And it'll be different in the future. So don't get hung up on the specific technology. Understand who your audience is and how to get to them. And if your audience is on Snapchat, go for it. And that could be your advantage in being that person that markets to companies that have the demographic, or if your business is, you know, is going that route. If your audience isn't there, it doesn't matter how good you are at Snapchat, you're not going to reach them, and there's no point. So again, but my best advice to all of you is forget about the specific platform, understand your audience and how you're going to get reach them, and that'll guide you as to what the platform should be.
Yeah, we did. I did a talk to Red Deer College, and I did actually a Snapchat lens for them, and or a little filter thing that swiped across. And so we did a whole thing about Snapchat, and so but that made sense because it's Red Deer College. So yeah, absolutely know it. And I mean, yes, you're on Snapchat, but how many businesses? And then I would look at, okay, what do I like about them and why am I following them? And then how can you use that knowledge? Like you said, you research a lot to see and then start experimenting and see what works for your brand. But yeah, it's a great way to build your brand too personally. It's a great way. I love Snapchat for that. And it's good for public speaking. That's how I learned.
Is it 5 seconds and you got to close? Like my son over there in the corner, he works with me in my photo company, right? He's the Snapchatter, right? I don't do us grown-ups here are on Twitter, but
It's almost dead, just
he's
like
on
me.
Snapchat.
We're all almost dead. That was awesome.
Please join me in thanking our wonderful
My pleasure.